By one estimate, 7,000 healthcare workers marched in the White Coats for Black Lives social justice protest in Seattle Saturday. Dr. Estelle Williams was one of the organizers.
We really wanted to lend our voices as healthcare providers to really elevate the call that was coming from the community.
It puts healthcare workers at odds with the message they've been sending for months that large public gatherings can further the spread of coronavirus. But even some renowned virus trackers are saying these protests are worth the risks. University of Washington Health Metrics professor Ali Mokdad spoke to King 5's Margaret Larson last week.
Racism is more dangerous to my country than COVID-19.
Basically, on June 1st and June 2nd, there were protests in Ellensburg, and we have an individual who tested positive for COVID-19 who was in attendance of both of those protests.
Casey Knutson of the Kittitas County Public Health Department issued this release today saying that a COVID-positive protester in Ellensburg was wearing a mask while in attendance, but that others may have been exposed. A reminder that these protests come with health risks.
I just wonder if the health departments are worried about the mixed message that could be going out.
We can protest, we can do this, but we can't do that. People are really aware of those inconsistencies, and it's a really, really difficult message to put out to the public. So again, what we want to tell people is to just do these things as safely as possible, to wear those face coverings, to get that physical distance if you can.
So obviously many of you have missed out on life-changing events, whether they're weddings, funerals, what have you. We wanted to ask the King County Public Health Department what they think about health officials, health experts, and healthcare workers taking part in these kinds of protests. The King County Health Department declined to do an interview with us today, but they did point us to a blog that they wrote recently on this issue, one that mostly talks about tips that people can employ to keep themselves safe when they're out on the protest lines. I'm Chris Ingles reporting live in Seattle.
Chris, thank you. In the past 24 hours, 2 new coronavirus deaths have been reported in Washington. That brings the total number of people who've died from the virus in our state to 1,161. The total number of COVID cases also went up by more than 300 for a total of 24,041 positive cases.